Om Divi Bhumau Tathakashe Bahirantascha me Vibhuhu Yo Vibhatyavabhasatma Tasmai Sarvatmane Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's continue with the Arjuna upakhyanam, one of the very important chapter where the philosophy given by the Krishna to Arjuna in the battlefield, and that's what Vasishtha uses while conversing with the Rama. In fact, original Brihad Yoga Vasishtha, when you take, there are several shlokas, several stanzas which are picked up by Vasishtha in the Brihad Yoga Vasishtha. But in this Laghu Yoga Vasishtha, then the essence of Yoga Vasishtha, a few of them have been chosen. And of course, if you look at Bhagavad Gita, all the 700 shlokas were an extraordinary, wonderful journey of yoga teaching from Krishna to Arjuna. The parallel between Krishna to Arjuna and Rama to Vasishtha is very similar. There also, it is to re-establish dharma after a very long struggle that Pandavas and Kauravas went through. And it has come to Mahabharata war. It is like precipitating where the war is between dharma and adharma. That's what at one point of time Krishna says to his brother. And that is Balarama. He says that it is not between two cousins, the war is between dharma and adharma, and you take the side of dharma. If you do not take the side of dharma and you be away from it, that means you are supporting adharma indirectly. So that's what caution Krishna gives to his own brother, elder brother, Balarama. So that means it's a war between dharma and adharma. To re-establish dharma, Krishna has brought the Pandavas there to see that the Mahabharata war is the point where dharma gets established. In the case of Ramayana, Rama's advent itself is to see that he establishes dharma. The number of Rakshasas, the demons that were there, were so many, and their attack was on the rishis, on the people who are doing the penance. And there is another very surprising thing is the Rakshasas themselves that they were doing penance. But for what gain that they were doing the penance was to see that they get the power, and with that power they can misuse the whole thing. So this gives another very important insight, is that meditation and the powers and being able to develop mental ability powers is not the end all. Actually, it should be supported by the values that you adapt to see that you help the society. That's something which is very important. Otherwise, Rama's enemies, later on that you find out, and that's what is basically Ravana and Indrajit and all those things. They had done a lot of penance, they had done a lot of tapas, and they had also a lot of powers. But all those powers, they were only misusing it. And Rama's coming there to see that how not only that the spiritual practices are important, but at the same time to see that they're used in the right direction, good purpose. This is very, very significant because many times what happens is that you still think that you are doing good, you are doing the spiritual activity, but suddenly somewhere, subtly that it has taken a different drift, different direction. And that's what is the power of attachment of the world outside. Any point of time, rather than going towards the spiritual inner being that is there within us, we can easily be drifted by the world outside. And the outside world is actually created by the God's ability. And that God's ability by which that whole thing manifests is what is called as Vibhuti. Viseshena bhutaha, that means to say all this manifestation that happened, especially extraordinarily manifested by his own, the divinity itself. And so from that inner peace and divinity, all these things manifest. And the same thing that happens if somebody goes to these practices and attains some, gains hand on any of these things, he can misuse those powers. And that's a very big lesson, that we should not stop at the level of the achievement of the powers that are there, but we have to go towards peace and tranquility. And finally, we need to surrender that to the higher cause so that the divinity can manifest. So that's why it is called as God's activity. When you surrender your ego, when you don't have any other negative agenda within you, that is when it's all God's activity that is being done. And for that purpose, this journey is very important. And so there is similarity. But what happened is that Ramayana happened much before Mahabharata took place. Krishna and Arjuna's discussion is much later than what Rama and Vasishtha's discussion took place in Yoga Vasishtha. But in spite of the fact that this is much later point of time that this discussion was done, bodily several shlokas are carried in the case of Yoga Vasishtha. Some explanation some people give is that person who reaches that spiritual level, they cross the time boundaries. That means to say, they have a vision of what happens in the future, what dialogues take place in the future, and the past, and everything that they transcend, therefore that they have the information. And this is trying to make it a little more mystic, but I would try to use another logic which can be more acceptable in a simple sense. We don't have to complicate the issue. And that is, I feel that whatever the dialogue that has taken place between Rama and Vasishtha during the time of Treta Yuga, at the time of Rama, before he was sent to the with Vishwamitra, and from there the work started, the work of establishing dharma started. But before that, so whatever that happened in Treta Yuga, that means almost like 2,000-3,000 years before what Mahabharata war took place. But whatever the recording that was done, later on it was being revised again and again with the adding so many stories in between, so that it becomes Brihad Yoga Vasishtha, the whole magnum opus called Yoga Vasishtha. So therefore, probably these stories must have been added because they have similar purpose, similar idea. And you see, in any of these stories, the whole purpose is to see that how you convey the philosophy behind that. The characters are only example, but the philosophy is something which is very important. And when you come to the idea of philosophy, naturally Bhagavad Gita is a good source of conveying the amount of philosophy that was given by Krishna to Krishna to Arjuna, and that is quoted here. So therefore, we have Arjuna upakhyanam, that's supposed to be the chapter on Arjuna, which is taken here, and bodily several sutras from Yoga Vasishtha, from Bhagavad Gita, are picked up in Yoga Vasishtha. But then another thing that is very important, and this message of, if you say the core message of Bhagavad Gita, Ramakrishna Paramhansa used to ask that somebody asked Ramakrishna Paramhansa, what is the single line message of Bhagavad Gita? He says that Gita is that the book, and then reverse it, that is Tyaga. Is a Tyagi, is the one, that is the idea of Bhagavad Gita. That means sacrifice, giving up, not having an attachment. It is non-attachment. This is what is Tyaga. But then more importantly, that another thing that you can think of, the pinnacle of Bhagavad Gita, which is supposed to be the 11th chapter, and it culminates into 12th chapter. And there, the main point is that Arjuna surrenders himself to Lord Krishna. So the surrender is the second aspect that he has to bring about, so that what happens is the work that you do is, as Krishna says to Arjuna, that all these people are killed, everything has happened. If you would like to be there as a just simple carrying on that activity which is already done. You can be there so that you don't have to be under stress. Nimitta matram bhavasavya sachi. That is the idea that Gita gives us. Surrender, and second thing is sacrifice, and third is the most important thing, surrender aspect. Recognize the divinity, the highest aspect of the divinity, which encompasses everything. That's what is Vishwarupa Sandarshana. And that point Krishna shows to Arjuna, and in that Arjuna finds out everything has happened. So that is the third message, that he says that the divinity is the work activity that's going on. You are only the simple pawn in between. So go ahead and do the activity. If you don't do the activity, somebody else will always do it, and then the work will be finished because these people are already dead. And also the idea of that the spiritual knowledge, spiritual journey is to go beyond the good and bad, right and wrong, to a higher level to re-establish that particular dharma. And that's what is the three different important messages that Bhagavad Gita gives, and also the methodology adapted are the various aspects of yoga. So picking up those ideas from Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Vasishtha builds this particular chapter on Arjuna and Arjuna's dialogue, whatever the way that Vasishtha explains to Rama what Arjuna has taken. So a few shlokas that are there in the essence of Yoga Vasishtha, the book normally that we are referring to, and that's where Krishna says to Arjuna that Atma hi bodhayishyanti tam devaha prapya karyaika siddhaye Atma hi anadi madhyastham hato dehe nahanyate shashvatoyam ajo nityo janma mrityu vivarjataha yogasthaha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha. 28th and 29th sutras in the essence of Yoga Vasishtha. Bodhayishyati tam devaha. That means the God will teach. Devaha is the God or Krishna. He teaches to Arjuna prapya karyaika siddhaye, for the accomplishment of the unique work that has arrived, the work that you are supposed to be in hand, you are having in the hand. Atma hi, and earlier in the chapter 2nd, he also gave this idea, and again he repeats in this particular shloka, Atma hi anadi madhyastham madhyantaha. Atma itself is something which is behind adi madhya antaha, but it does not have adi madhya antaha. That means to say Atma is something which is continuing, and on the Atma, that this body has the beginning and the middle and the end. Adi means birth, and Madhya, Adi, Madhya is the living, and the Nantaha is the death, and Hate Dehe Nahanyate. So Deha is something which goes through these things, and Atma does not get Hanyate. In fact, the very definition of Deha means body. The very definition of Deha is Dahati te Deha. That means to say you can burn it. And that's what happens when, in the Hindu culture, at least that we know, Sanatana Dharma, at least we know, that when this body becomes no more useful, that means to say the life has gone from, supposed to be life force has gone, major life force has gone from here, then what we do is that we burn this body. And this burning process is what is called as dahana. Dahana samskara. And dahana is also a samskara. It is not an ordinary thing, it's a sacred activity. That means to say, when I die, my body is burnt in the fire. And that's a very good samskara. That's a very good activity that we do it. So that what happens is, there's a very subtle meaning behind it. This burning is what is called as dahana. And this body which undergoes that dahana is supposed to be deha. But then this deha is not me, deha is not you. Somebody who is behind this deha is supposed to be dehi. And deha belongs to that belongs to him. And he will not die, only the Deha will die. And then Deha is Dahati. The process of Dahana, the process of burning it on the fire, is the way that the very simple idea, as I said, it is samskara. Samskara means basically it's a very good um, activity, positive activity for the person who died and for the persons who are doing that karma. It's supposed to be something like a lesson of good kind of a thing. That's why it's always said that when somebody dies, you always think of positive about him. And also while doing these karmas that you do, dahana karma, or the ceremonies that we practice, they're supposed to be spiritual practices with an idea of spirit, with the idea of good feeling about that person who died. And therefore that you do these kind of an activity. Now, what is this idea of dahana? Is the way that when a person comes to this world, a person basically is the dehi, one who uses this body. What he does is he borrows, he has to do various activities. Various activities, he needs an instrument, and this instrument is supposed to be this body, mind, consciousness, body, mind, intellect, complex, and all those things. So he would get the necessary ingredients from the respective godheads that are there. Like, for example, fire god, we take the fire, wind god, we take the wind, we borrow from the earth god the earth, and we request them, we pray them that, look, I'm going to use these things for the sake of good intention that I have. For that, I borrow that. And once the work is over, once this body becomes useless, then I will give you back whatever that is supposed to be borrowed from you. So this is the offering that we do. This is a samskara. That is the idea of we are trying to give back the various aspects of this body to those various centers of power that are there. The wind, fire, air, etc. 5 elements that are there, we give to them. So giving back is something which is very ceremoniously in the form of giving, offering it to the fire, it is done. And fire is that force which can immediately burn the whole thing and then separate out various elements that are there. That means to say water element goes to water, fire element goes to fire, earth element finally we merge it into the earth. So therefore this whole journey completed. The way from the birth to the end that this journey is completed, journey of this particular body which is supposed to be an instrument. And if I have some more desires, then I will come back and then again reform by borrowing everything. So this is continuing. That's how basically the rebirth is done. So Deha is something which undergoes this particular death. And it is not just only at the time when somebody dies and then you burn it in the fire. That's what is Dahana takes place. The way that Indian philosophy or the Sanatana Dharma looks at is that every moment that Dahana is going on, like for example, the fire that you take, the food that you take, in the process of digestion, all those things, how many cells are dead? How many parts of the body are already dying? And then new things are born and all that. So this burning and then removing whatever that is burnt ashes and all those things are going on continuously all the time. So that means to say, Dehi is always there as much as that in this body. The Hana Kriya is also constantly going on. Burning activity is going on and then we burnt away. Like for example, you take the breath in and then we use the oxygen that goes into that to do so many activities. And finally, all that is burnt into carbon dioxide and then we throw it out. So this process of Dehi is continuously going on in the body. So therefore, prapta karyaika siddhaye, in order to do the karya means activity, siddhaye, in order to accomplish the activity, prapya karyaika siddhaye, therefore that this body has taken, atma hi anadi madhyantaha. Atma is something which na anadi. That means to say there is no beginning, end, the middle. For the Atma, Atma is continuing. Only thing is Dehe. It is in the Deha. is the one that undergoes the death. Atma nahanyate. It will not die. I use this. It's as simple as the way that I like a dress and then I borrow that, I buy that dress, I take that dress, I use it. And after some time, I see that that dress is not useful anymore. I discard that. Similarly, this body also we discard. How long are we going to continue with this particular body? I'll come back if I want to come back with a fresh one. And also, this body is something which is there for several years. Therefore, it is actually outdated. That means many things in this world I cannot connect. My son connects much better. My grandson, child connects much better to the world because that world is fresh for them. So should I continue for great grandson or should I come back as myself as a great grandson and then continuing? That's why we have this idea in the Sanatana Dharma that we choose to come back to this life. Not only this life, we would like to have the same family, same surroundings, so that I continue this journey. My mission can be accomplished. Until that time, my mission is complete. I'm continuing with that. So now this Atma that is there, or Dehi who is there behind it, this Atmahi, Anadi Madhyantaha, there is nothing like beginning and middle and end. It's continuing throughout. And that's what you feel it also, that you look at the child's photograph of yours, you can't even recognize that it was you. But then you were a child, somebody elders will tell in the house, yes, this is your own picture. You were looking like that. You have all this kind of features that it was there when you were a child. Now you have outgrown such a way that you don't recognize your features anymore. So therefore that you are a child and then you are in the middle and then you are a growing old adult you became. So all these things are happening on you. That means to say you are somebody who is traveling behind and then something is happening on the surface. So the outer layer is going on, removing, but then you are the core. And that Atma is the core. And all these things, that outer layers are like the onion peel. And then you go on peeling the onion. So ultimately, what is there in the middle of it? Nothing. And that's how Atma is something which is nothing, which does not have something, any attribute of it. So there is nothing like Anadi, Adi, Madhyanta. It is not there existing. And that's what is Deha, Dehi. And then Deha is the one that is Hanyate, that dies, but then Na Hanyate, Dehi. And then Shashvat Goyam Ajo Nityo Janma Mrityu Vivarjataha. So Shashvato Ayam. So it's eternal. This particular Atman is eternal. Ajaha, unborn, Ja means birth, unborn, and also Nityaha. This idea of Nitya is something which does not undergo any change, because any change means actually that means previous one is dead and then nothing new has come back. So there is nothing like any change that's happening, and that's what is Nitya. Ever existing in the same way as it is, Nitya, and then Janma Mrityu Vivarjitaha. There is nothing like birth, there is nothing like death. Whatever that is born will die, but then Atma is something which is free from both the birth and the death. It's all there. What we see is that I exist between the birth and death. But what philosophy says is that you are existing beyond the death to the rebirth also. If your desires are there, you come back. If you have something to accomplish, that you come back. Those who don't have to have any accomplishment or anything like that, they don't have any agenda for them. They come back, they will also come back, but it's like a sport for them. It's not binding on them. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also, that Namam karmani limpanti, name karma phale smrtaha, iti mam yopi janati, karma bhenna sabhadyate. I am not bound by anything. I am not supposed to do. I just come here to enjoy. So this is what is that Atmastati. At that point of time, he just comes back, just as a sport that he comes back. He doesn't have any particular agenda with him. A lot of people have an agenda. They have very fixed program to do it. For that reason that they come, and every minute they are continuously caught up with that idea, my time is spent, I'm not doing it. So all that will be there. So as urgency, this and that. And finally, when they die, they will still have an idea that I have not accomplished what I was supposed to do it. So many things that are there. It's the story of Yayati also like that. Yayati's father, he lived for 80, 100 years or something like that very comfortably. Then one day, death god comes to him and says that, now time has come that I have to take you. But he says, but I have not yet lived. I still have so many things to do it. Nice person, very good, very with full of values, very adorable, and all those things. But he says that time is up, therefore I have to take you. He said, no, I have not yet started anything. In fact, I would like to really experience this world. And you already come to take me away. And then it is just, I have not yet started, just I started living. Then the death god also, he was somewhat compassionate to him, but then he said, look, my department is something where head count is something which is very important. That means to say, I need to take. Only one thing is that I need to take in your place somebody else. But then that person should willingly come with me. I can't just go and take somebody on the street. Then my job will be lost. So therefore, that I can also give you a suggestion for that. So that if that person agrees, then you can stay, and then I'll take him because head count will be there. And what is that suggestion? If you go and ask anybody else, they certainly will not accept to go in your place. Particularly your wife, she will never accept that she will go in your place. But you ask your 100 sons, and out of that, if somebody agrees to go with you, with me, in your place, then it's okay. The purpose is served. It's a good idea. Then he went and asked his sons. Each one of them, because this person is already 100 years, the others also 70, 80, whatever it is. So they all said that, look, we also want to live, we also have to, lot of things, and then how can I exchange death with you? So I just want to continue. But then last little fellow who was there, maybe a little child, Yayati, and he said, when dad asked, he said, I'm ready to go. You please take the life in my place, and then I will go with the death god. His father was surprised. He said that nobody agreed. How did you agree? What made you to agree? He gave a very simple but wise answer. He said that, Dad, you lived for 100 years, and then you feel that 100 years did not give you that satisfaction. And if I continue to live for another 100 years, whatever time that is there, and I will be continuing like you, and this is not going to fulfill me. So I know very well that this life is not going to give me any fulfillment. Why should I hold on to this life? So therefore, that I exchange with you so that I leave this place and I choose something else somewhere else so that you can take it. See, what a wise son he is. He learned from his father's life that this 100 years of life that father lived doesn't make any sense. It just, time is going, therefore that you are living. Is it the time which is going, or is it that you are really traveling? We are not traveling anything. It's only the time which is moving that forward. So therefore, Yati gave his life to his father so that he was alive. And anyway, the story continues that way. Here also, that Atma is something which does not die. There is no beginning, there is no middle, there is an end to it. So anadi hetaho dehena hanyate shashvatoyam ajo nityo janma mrityu vivarjataha. So this particular Atman is shashvata. It's ever existing, ajaha, unborn, nityaha. That means absolutely no change in that. And then janma mrityu vivarjataha. Birth and death, it's not touched by that. Birth and death are something like the two banks, and then the life is something which is flowing in between. So, and what now Arjuna, Krishna gives Arjuna the idea, Yogastha Guru Karmani, Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. This is a similar shloka which is taken from Bhagavad Gita. where he says that Yogastha Kurkarmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya. Sangam Tyaktva, here it is Phalanicha, Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya, Siddhi Asiddhya Samo Bhutva, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That's what is the most important definition of yoga. It comes in that particular sutra, Bhagavad Gita. Whereas here he says that Yogastha Kurkarmani Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. Now this is a very interesting statement, because that any activity that we do is for the sake of phala. Without phala, that we don't take up, without the result, without a benefit, that we don't do any activity. In fact, any activity, if I have to say, the first question comes from us is, then what is for me? What is that I would get? What is that I expect from doing all those things? So your expectation is there, your desire, wanting is there, your anxiety whether you get that or not, all these things are there. So therefore, basically, the phala becomes very important. Phala becomes very important. The whole idea of doing an activity is for the sake of phala. If it is not going to give me phala, then why am I doing any activity? So basically, that we are attached to the phala. But here says, Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. So attachment with the phala, that you give it up. And this is what is the way of doing Yogastha Kuru Karmani. Being in the state of yoga, doing an activity. Activity, whatever that the activity that we are doing, is something which is necessary in this life. The life itself is full of activity. So therefore, activity has to be done. But then don't have the attachment to the fruit of action, because many times the fruit may not appear to you. But the fruit may be appearing sometime later, by the time that you're already gone. So all those things are possibility. There is another very important idea, is that the activity that we do is the investment that we do. Naturally, it will have phala. Whatever the phala that it has to get, it will definitely get it. Only thing is that you might not see it. Our anxiety is that the phala, I have to be able to see that. I want to see that. No. Just doing an activity is something. Have confidence that it's a good activity that you do it. The fruit will always be good. You might see or might not see. It now has nothing to do with you. Actually speaking, that phala has nothing to do with you. The karma is something that you need to do it. You are born with that idea of doing karma. You have nothing to do with the phala. Karma is in your hands. Phala is not in your hands. Karma is what you give. Phala is what you get. Naturally, what happens is that if my karma is supposed to be bad, the phala will be bad. So therefore, that Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. Don't look at the fruit of action. Attachment don't bring about. Siddhi Siddho Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That's continuation of this particular sutra in Bhagavad Gita. Siddhi Asiddhau Samo Bhutva. Recognize that whether success or failure, you got it or did not get it, whatever it is there, Samo Bhutva. Keep them together as equal, as one. And Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. This idea of looking at both these things in the form of samatva, in the form of that balance, harmony, that's what is supposed to be Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. That's a very beautiful definition of yoga in the case of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita gives several definitions, but this is a very important definition. Why this becomes so important is because that Arjuna is trying to run away from the battlefield. Either maybe he didn't want to kill anybody, maybe that this opposite force is so much. All these things are not consideration that is there. They are all there, they will be there. But only thing is that the establishing dharma is something which is very important. That's why Krishna deviates the whole focus of that hymn from that on to the way that he has to do it with the help of the doing the good work, establishing dharma, that he has to do it. So therefore, Yogastha Kuru Karmani Sangam Tyaktva Dhananjaya Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva. There it is. Dhananjaya is a just Siddhya Siddhyo Samo Bhutva Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. On the other side, on the other hand, and the shloka says Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. Don't look at the fruit of action that is there. And when you look at the nature, Is it not the same way the nature is working? Look at the way that you see a peacock. Many times we don't wonder, we wonder why that peacock is in that ecstatic mood. First of all, it's ecstatic mood that it unfolds the whole beautiful rainbow colored the tail and then dances with that. And we think it is something which is an expression of joy. We don't know really. We have not entered into the mind of heart of the peacock so that it dances. But we see it's how beautifully how it dances. And the dancing of the peacock is something which is, for what sake? It's in the forest that peacock is dancing. Nobody is watching the peacock. Nobody takes any pictures of that. But he dances beautifully. So that means to say that in the nature also, activity is there, that there is no sangha towards the fruit of action. For the fruit of action, there is nothing like that. You have a tree, which is huge tree of mango, and year after year it produces so many beautiful, tasteful mangoes. They grow. And then mango, it gives all that, doesn't want anything in return, doesn't ask for anything in return. Is it not something which the plant is doing, just doing for the sake of doing it, without any phalam? Phalam tyaktva, that's what it says, that sangam tyaktva phalanicha. They have absolutely no idea of what is called as the attachment, sangam, for the phala. Because the moment that you attach the phala, sangha, your attachment to the phala, then you see that the phala starts driving you, starts really guiding you, dictating terms with you. All these things happen with that. So therefore, that beautiful definition of yoga Krishna brings about here, yogastha kuru karmani, sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Sanyascha sarva sankalpaha, samaha shantamana bhava, tyagaha sankalpa jalanam asangaha iti kathyate. So perform actions, sanyasta sarva sankalpaha, perform our actions and the duties established in yoga. And that's what further doing an activity in the field of yoga, that is, says that having renounced attachment, sangam tyaktva, that means attachment, give up, renouncing the attachment, the desire for fruits, and sangam sankalpa samaha, and fruit and the result of such action, but equal in pleasure and pain. Your sankalpa samaha, that means deep inside that you have a balance for, there is nothing like you are desiring for anything, whatever that comes in the way that you are prepared to take it. Therefore, it says, Sarva Sankalpa Jalanam Asangaha iti kathyate. There's absolutely no sankalpa from my side. This is very interesting thing, because basically in the beginning what happens is that children have so many mind which is going in so many helter-skelter different directions. Children, it is like that. Then we say, come on, focus, focus. And then in order to focus, the child wants to sleep, escapes from doing homework and this and that. Then we try to see that the child should have what is called as the sankalpa. So sankalpa is the way, that willpower through which that you do that, you accomplish that. Without willpower, all these things in this world that we are accomplishing, we would not have accomplished. Somebody has to go on to the Everest top peak. Does it require so much of sankalpa that is there? So like that, there are several things where the sankalpa is embedded. You do all that kind of thing with the help of sankalpa. You grow that. But then here he says, sanyasta sarva sankalpaha. That means to say, giving up all the sankalpas. And this is something which is interesting, which has, what happens is that, first of all, we are supposed to develop sankalpa, but then you say that give up the sankalpa. Anyway, I don't have any sankalpa, therefore that have I just given up now so that am I peaceful, like that? No. What happens is that you can only become lazy. Sankalpa is there, your sankalpa is just become weak. Otherwise, that wanting to do is there. So, therefore, that sankalpa is there, and for which that we do that. Without having sankalpa, there is no question of sankalpa tyagaha, sankalpa tyagaha, giving up the sankalpa. If you don't have sankalpa, where is the question of sankalpa tyaga? Having first of all sankalpa is something which is very important. Like for example, that Buddha has given up a kingdom and went to the forest and then tapas, and then he also got a begging bowl in his hand, bhiksha. And then he used to go to the people's houses, collect the bhiksha that was there. His parents always were angry with him, saying that, yeah, the whole kingdom, whole treasure, everything is yours. You just left all these things and go on your own. But then he wanted to go because basically that he wanted to try something different. What happens is that Sanyasta Sarva Sankalpaha. So there is no sankalpa at all, and all that sankalpa. First of all, you get the sankalpa, you practice sankalpa, you do that discipline yourself, and you raise yourself with that sankalpa. It's very important in the beginning that you need to really push up yourself for that sankalpa. After pushing up, and after that willpower that you do all those things, then you give up. Without that sankalpa not being there, where is the question of giving up sankalpa? It's like the way I climb up the stairs and I need to get down. If I need to get down, then why do I climb up the stairs? No, climbing up the stairs and looking at all those things, then you come down, then you have that wonderful knowledge that what you have seen when you climbed up the stair. The same way that somebody does with the sankalpa, all the practices, and then he reaches that highest, he gets that particular position, that idea of the Brahmastiti, Atmastiti, then he can give the sankalpa. That means to say, it's very easy to say that my nature is Atman, this body, mind, etc., etc. It's not me that will say that. But this is a bookish knowledge. It's very easy. Aham Brahmasmi, everybody says that. Kasarvam Kalvidam Brahma, nothing but Brahman is there. All these things, people know that. But it's like parrot, like recitation. Is it something that you really feel within you? And that feeling is something which is extraordinary, that becomes very important. It's an experience of the idea of that nothing but Brahman that is there. So once with that sankalpa you reach that state, then that give up that sankalpa. You have to recognize that the greatness, the grandeur of that sankalpa, that's what is yourness. So therefore that sanyasta sarva sankalpaha samaha shanta amanaha bhava. He says, oh Arjuna, that you become these things. What are these things? Sarva sankalpaha sanyastaha. You are somebody who has given up all the sankalpas that are there. Samaha. It's a very beautiful word in Sanskrit. We don't have a proper word in English, but then we translate it as equal. And generally everybody says, translate that as equal. But I have got my own objection towards that, because equal, in what sense you call it as equal? Because in God's creation, there is nothing like equal. There is nothing like two objects different completely. However much that you bring them close, you put them together and all that, they do not become one object. They just try to remain as two objects only. So therefore, this Sarvastha Satya Sama, this is what is Sama. Sama means that where each one is unique and uniquely equal that way. It is not the question of equal, uniquely equal. That means to say, for somebody that 10 units of something that can give you a blissful state, for somebody else it is 5 units will give you that blissful state. And then you try to adapt that way, that you provide that way. See, adult, he takes something food and then he can enjoy. But a child may not be able to take that. So take the child's food, small quantity, and therefore child will be happy, nourished. So therefore, what happens is that samaha is that very important thing, that the way it is necessary, what is the way it is necessary, you provide it. Somebody is shivering, you provide a shawl. Whereas somebody is sweating, then you take away a shawl from him. So both these things are the compassionate activities that you do it. So samaha, and then shanta manaha. That means shanta manaha. Your mind is very peaceful and you become that, oh bhava. And tyagaha sankalpa jalanam tyagaha. That means to say, The sankalpa is the one which binds you in the form of a net. That's why it is called a sankalpa jala. Very difficult when it becomes a net, then sankalpa, because it's something like, that you are doing good. It's supposed to be good work that you do it naturally. It has to have that value. But then even that giving a value, it becomes like, it is like jalanam. That means to say it is a net, it's an entrap. Actually, what happens is that what is supposed to be the bad will not become like an attractive entrap, but something which is good becomes like an entrap. So very successful. Because people also say that you are doing good work, and then you are receiving from all directions that you are doing good work, and then that continues. But all that is the world outside. So that means to say, world used you to do for that, and then world continues to do that. Ultimately, a time will come when you will have to depart this body. Absolutely, you cannot give up all these things, and then these things will become like your vasana and samskara that you come back. The whole idea is that tyagaha sankalpa jalanam asangaha iti kathyate. That non-attachment is the way that you become free from that. Isavasya Upanishad also puts into that way, into category. Tyaga is something which is very important so that you come out of that attachment with that. Manmana bhav madbhaktaha madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasa yukteya atmanam matparayanaha. So Krishna's focus on Arjuna was about dharma, whereas Vasishtha's focus on Rama is the idea of being freed from the mind into the self. So that is the goal that he has to see. Therefore, he says he changed that Atma is the self. That's why he changed the Sangam Tyaktva Phalanija Sanyasta Sarva Sankalpaha Samha Shantamanaha Bhava Tyagaha Sankalpa Jalanam Asangaha Iti Katyate. Non-attachment is the way that you reach that state. Manmana Bhava Madbhakti Bhava Madhyaji Bhava Mam Maskuro Mame Vaishyasi Yukteyam Atmanam Rasas Atmanam Matparayanaha. Fix your mind on me, and then Manmana Bhava and Madbhakta, my devotee, devoted to me and sacrificed to me and bow to me, and so shall you come to me. Having thus united yourself with the higher self, higher object, this is how the journey has to continue. The journey cannot stop just because that you are dead, because that there is always that part of you that is there behind, and that continues to grow, and that has to go on. So, manmana bhava, that means your mind is completely filled with me. Mad bhakto bhava, you surrender to me. Bhakti means it's enriched kind of love, enriched, ennobled. And what is the way that you ennoble the love? It is dissolve the ego, then the love gets enhancement. Love gets that enrichment, and that's by giving this ego. Madhyaji, Mam Namaskuru, devoted to me, sacrificed to me. Yaji Yajna, Madhyaji, whatever that you are doing is nothing but my yajna, and you are performing that. You are eating food is my yajna. You are studying is my yajna. You are going to sleep is my yajna. All these things are my yajna that you do it. Yajna is an extraordinary piece of activity, very special activity to see that you survive. For that reason, all these things are given. So therefore, manmana bhava, madbhakto bhava, and madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi yukteyam atmanam matparayanaha. Sacrifice to me, bow to me, so that you can come to me, having united yourself from as your highest object. So finally you come to that. Samanyam paramam chetti dve rupe vidya menakha pashyad yuktam samanyam param sukshmam anamayam. Sinless one, O Arjuna, know the common, the ordinary, and the highest for the transcendental as my two forms, the ordinary one, which endowed with hands, and the transcendental form, subdued and untainted. Yavat apratibuddhihi tam tavat samanyako bhava tat kramad samprabuddhaha tam tato jnasyasi tat param. One, as long as you are not awakened, as long as that you are ordinary person, not awakened, and so long as one belongs to the ordinary. Yavat apratibuddham tvam tavat samanyako bhava, and that's what is everybody is involved in that. Tat kramat samprabuddhaha tvam tato jnasyasi tat parama. So, well awakened, the self-realized, in course of that, you will then know the transcendental form, the transcendental form that you know. Ajnananat atmano nunam sattam ayati vasanaha aptahano mahabodhat dilayam ghati vasanam evam sambodhitam samyak tyaktosi kashtosi bhavishyasi. It's indeed by the absence of the knowledge of the self, mental impressions come into being. In the self-knowledge, mental impressions vanish as long as the great knowledge of the spiritual knowledge, thus we finish Arjuna, will become free from the sorrow. Arjuna is having that sorrow, my own people I'm going to kill, and all those things. A wise person is person. Jnana ajnanat atmano nunam sattam ayati vasanaha atmajnane mahabodhat balayam yati dasaraha. It's indeed by the absence of the knowledge of the self that mental impressions order into being. The self-knowledge, self-improvement vanishes on account of great awakening of the spiritual knowledge. Thus, well-instructed Arjuna will become free from sorrow. Ultimately, the idea is that it's not winning, losing, this and that and kind of thing. Just that having peaceful time, enjoy the time. That's very important. Bhikshu upakhyanam. But before going to the Bhikshu upakhyanam, let's see what is that Krishna says and which is taken in the Vasishtha school, in this Yoga Vasishtha. Matra sparsha sukaunteya nirmamo nirmana moha jatasanga doshaha adhyatmanitya sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani yah pashyate tatatmanaha matkartaram na pashyati. One who sees his own self in every other being, and then same self in the others also he will be able to see. And then one who sees that this Atman self is something, he is not the doer, akarta. And that fellow is the one who is really perceiving it. Perception also, he does not use the senses, that intuitively that he will be able to do that. And we accept that, and that's what is the way that he interacts. So this interaction is very important, where that you go with an idea of sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani jatmani yah pashyati tadatmanam akartaram na pashyati. And there is another sutra which Krishna brings about in Bhagavad Gita, and then that is picked up here. We'll look into that. He says, Nirmana mohaha jatasanga doshaha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha tandrair vimuktaha sukadukka sangaihi gacchanya mudhaha padamavyayam tata. So, mana moha, this means to say it is abhimana, it's infatuation, and then moha is the desire and clinging, and sanga dosha, nirmanamo, jita sanga dosha, that means to say the object is attached to, but at the same time there is no spoiling of the object just because, or individual just because that you're in contact with the object outside. So, nirmana mohaha jata sangado adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha. Nivritta kamaha, that means to say you rise above the level of desires, preferences, and all those things. And then, once you come out of all those things, nirmana moha, jitasanga dosha, adhyatma nitya, you always stay in the spiritual awareness, vinivritta kamaha. The kama has really turned inwards. Tandrair vimuktaha sukadukha sangaihi. Then sukadukha sangaihi, sukha and dukkha attachment with that, and tandrair vimukta, whatever that brings about the kind of self-forgetfulness, and from that level, that is Tandra, Tamas, and from that you come out of it. So, these are the things which are very important at this point of time. You need to come out of it. Matra sparshastu kaunteya, sitoshna sugatukkaha, agama apayinaha, anityaha, tam titikshasva bharata. Very easy for us to be immediately affected by whatever the information that the senses give us. On one side, that senses have to be very, very sensitive, and that's what is the growth. But then very senses which are supposed to be so sensitive, naturally what happens that the information also becomes that way very much affected. I've seen people whose senses are so small, so narrow, perception is right and wrong, the bandwidth is so small that something which is in that particular range, he can take it. Outside that range, he just cannot take it. I see, these are all nothing but the senses who are doing this. Senses in the objective world outside, matra sparsha hikamteya, sitoshna dukha dukha. These are the things which bring about sukha dukha. Agamaha apayinaha anityaha tam titikshasva bharata. So whatever that is nitya, just hold on to that. All these things are coming and going. But I see so many people that they become so sensitive. Not only that, the sensitivity, but the attachment to the sensitivity. Like for example, if the fan is on, that is too much. You switch off the fan, then they sweat. They can't take it. They must have fan. And then again, the moment that you switch on the fan, in 2 minutes, they become something different. This is what sensitivity, oversensitivity, attachment to sensitivity, all these things bring about this thing. Why it is given like that? Because we given so much of importance to sensitivity. We would constantly want to take care of us. Imagine that time when we didn't have all these things. Were there not people living so comfortably? They were all there. But then why did we create a world, different world? Because the simple reason is the different world what we created is something which we live. So, agamaha apayinaha anityaha. That means to say, this is something which is coming and going kind of tam titikshasva bharata. That means to say, you just have to bear with that. Ignore that. See, there are two important. You feel that because that you are sensitive. But then ignore that so that you have expansiveness. You don't have to be reacting to that. Many times what happens is that we so easily, so immediately react. If you don't react, even the body parts themselves start reacting. At one place that they cannot manifest a reaction at that one place, another place. Like for example, allergy is a condition where a small little change up and down immediately pushes you into a difficult situation. And then such people who have allergic, all those things, that they try to take all these allergy shots and all those things and steroid to see that the effect will not be there. Yes, now that wheezing, that problem, respiratory problem has come down. But in the process, what happened? They have sacrificed themselves at some other level. The stomach is upset or some headache they will get or something else that happens. That means to say that you are just dabbling between objective and the sense organ and all that, you are never an idea of going higher, rising above that. So, matra sparshahi kaunteya, sitoshna dukha, agamaha, apayanaha, nityaha, tam titikshasva bharata. And then further he says, Arjuna comes, say, yat karoshi yatasnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yatu, yat karishyasi kaunteya, tadatmeti atmeti sthiro bhavaha, yanmana yanmayo yo त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासंगम नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रयः कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किञ्चित् करोति यः. त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासंगम, give up all the karma phala, and then nityatuptah nirashrayah. See, this is a very different radical thinking in the Indian Sanatana Dharma compared to the way that the modern world looks at. Modern world, the activity itself is done for the sake of a particular result, that we have to do the activity. That becomes very important. But then he says that tyaktva karma phala sangam. The attachment to the karma phala, then give up that. Nitya truptaha. You are continuously full. You are satisfied. You are extremely satisfied. Nirashrayaha. You are not dependent on anything. You don't really want to depend on anything. Not even the thing that you want to do something, you want to make a change, you want to bring about all those things. All that you need to give up. Once it so happened that there was a conference somewhere in Dubai, and then we all assembled there. Some of this conference was not really properly planned or shabby organized. And then so many speakers came, and then they had to accommodate so many speakers. They're struggling, and I was happily watching the whole thing like a witness. Everything is present. One of the very important persons, she came, that comes and says that, look, I wanted to give at least about 40 minutes of talk. That's what people invite me, and I'm worth that. And then you call me and give me 15 minutes of talk. That's insulting, this and that. If I did not come, I would have done so many papers, published so many things and all that. And then she was complaining to me. Then I smiled. I said, laughed. I said, wow, wonderful. So that means if more time is there, you could have published so many things. You'd done so much work for the society. It's not for you, for the society. Yeah. Whereas I'm here and I don't even have any time, small little time. But then what's very important thing is that I really enjoy being here. So I think that God sent kind of people, a set of people who are there, and they are there only to change the world. Other set of people just enjoy. I'm that second kind. So therefore, I have absolutely no idea of what is that the phala that I need to get it. Just go ahead and do it. That's what the whole forest is doing. All the trees are doing. All the animals are doing. That's what I said earlier. The peacock unfolds itself. Do you mean to say that it's looking for any result that is there? There's a small little story that happened in the case of Birbal, Tansen and Akbar. Akbar was fond of music, and then he made, Tansen was his Asthana Vidwan, and then he sang so beautiful. Tansen say, and when hearing Tansen, Akbar says that, you're such an extraordinary, wonderful singer. And I don't think anybody on this earth who can sing better than you. You're the best singer, as far as I know. Tansen, he confesses, he says that, no, sir, I'm not the best. In fact, you should listen to my teacher, Haridas. And he is extraordinary. And when you listen to him, then you will see that what I sing is not even singing at all. You will not even approve as a song when I sing. Huh? He said, so great, then why don't you bring him here? He said, no, he will not come. Then let's go to him, wherever he is there, and then we'll listen to him. He said, no, even that's also not possible. Because if you go there, he will not sing for you. Right? You say that he's a great singer, he's an extraordinary, and then he's something that I should listen to so that you can see the best of the music. I have to listen to it. Is there no way? Is there no way that I could listen to it? There is a way. You can still do that. What's the way? I know one thing, that is on the full moon night, on the Purnima day, on the full moon night, by sitting by the side of Yamuna, he sings as nobody is there, and he doesn't want anybody to be there. If we go there, then he will stop singing. But then I want to listen to it. Akbar says, he says, we can do that. Just change yourself incognito, that you should not look like. And then we'll go to the forest, and then by the side of Yamuna, we settle down in the forest in the night itself, before he comes, middle of the night, when the full moon night is there. Before that, we go and settle down, and then absolutely no noise, no nothing. And then he comes and sings, and you listen to it. And then after he goes away, then we should come back. Otherwise, we'll be giving a hint that we are listening to it, and that's really very bad. And that too, I'm being his disciple, I brought you. He does not appreciate that. But Akbar was mad after music, therefore that he agreed, and then he went and sat down. Both of them were sitting in the forest, quietly. And then Haridas comes and then sings beautifully, couple of hours, and then he goes away. After that, Birbal and Akbar, Tansen and Akbar came back to kingdom. And Akbar says to Tansen, "Wow, yeah, what you said is really true, Tansen. You are not even a singer in front of him. He's so extraordinary, he's so wonderful. You were his student, yes, but then why did you not practice? Why did you do this? That whatever that he could sing, that he could have learned the singing like that." He said, whatever that he taught, whatever that I could learn, I learned everything. And then I came out. But then how was that? He sings so beautiful. You don't sing that way. Birbal Tansen gave a beautiful answer. He said that I sing for your favor. He does not sing for anybody's favor. He's like the flower that is flowering in the forest. He is like the peacock which is dancing in the forest. He is like the river which is rumbling in the forest without expecting anybody to appreciate that. I'm doing for the karma phala. I'm looking for appreciation. And the moment that even an iota of this aspect is there, that becomes like ashraya that takes away my trupti. That's why he says, Tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya truptaha. He is nitya trupti. I'm not that. Nirashraya. I'm an ashraya. Then he is nirash. Such a person, when he enters into the karma abhipravrittopi, such a person, he is not that he is doing. Because if he is there, he is expecting the result. If he is there, he is expecting for praise. So therefore, karmanya abhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Karma does not touch him. He is free from that karma being touched. So therefore, essentially, this Atma is that which is not touched by any of the karma that's happening outside. The litmus test for that is that you're not looking for any benefits, any fruits out of that. An extraordinary, wonderful way that this is exactly what is Krishna said to Arjuna, and he couldn't improve that. Vasishtha says the same thing to Rama, giving an idea that Rama, your activity that you are going to do, go ahead and do it, should be like that. That's what is the activity which is dharmic activity. Of course, it just goes on in the same way. Other shlokas. Yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanajna dagdha karmanam tamahuhu panditam buddha. These are the two aspects of it. One aspect is that the manifested world outside, and that's what is the gross activity. But this activity has one thing behind. That's what is the unmanifest seed inside that. When there is a continuum between the seed, the intelligence that's there in the seed, that's what is jnana. And the jnana directly coming from the consciousness. And when your activity is completely in line, in tandem with that jnana that's there inside, which has absolutely no, from your side, no karma, no sankalpa, when these things are not there. And such a person is supposed to be the extraordinary person, spiritual person. So therefore, that Krishna, whatever the teaching that he gives to Arjuna, Vasishtha repeats to Rama. I'll stop it here. We'll continue the discussion next time when we meet. Hopefully, next week we may not have the satsang because a lot of things are happening. 15 days after that, we will have that satsang. And I'll be informing all of you. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. ఆరు ఐదు ముక్కాలు తనక